twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere. Friends to know and ways to grow, a reading rainbow. I can be anything. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. Reading rainbow.
Welcome to Priddle Monday. Priddle Monday, the place where the puzzles are real and the cookies don't matter. I want to welcome everybody. It is, Monday, so that means we do puzzles and riddles. Today it's going to be a little bit different. I want to welcome Brian P., Anagram, Wig Reeves, AK. Alan K. is now AK. All right, he means business now. Someone found a big pixelated cookie in the Rocky Mountains. No, not a new studio. Did I read your 3 anagram solve at Thor? No, I did not read your 3 anagram solve. Sasha, welcome. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I know all the Forrest Fenn community is all in a tither now that the treasure has been found. So I thought I would do something a little bit different. We will do puzzles and riddles later. Hey, Raven, welcome. Come back in 15 minutes. All good. Today I'm going to do a reading from the book Quest for the Golden Hare, which is a book that was made after the treasure hunt Masquerade. Masquerade, similar to the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt, was very popular. There was a golden hare that was what everybody was looking for. I believe there's a neighborhood of 1 million copies of the book sold. And I thought it would be timely to talk about where after the treasure hunt was finished. For Masquerade, just a quick review. It's similar to a child's book where there were paintings, and there was some little simple riddles in there and poems, and all these multiple of pictures. There's one with a hare. It was very complex, and it took 2 years to solve, and this is pre-internet. There's a picture of the hare that was solved. And I thought it was very similar to right now, where after the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt's been found, I thought we would go and do a little bit of reading from this Quest for the Golden Hare. You doing all right?
I'm doing great.
All right. All right. Let me see if everybody can hear me. Everybody can hear me, all right? Might be a little bit high, but that's okay. I've got a campfire going here. We're in the backyard. I thought maybe I could get a little bit of a sunset. I'm hoping for a little bit of a sunset behind me by the end of the show. I'm hoping. It's a nice day out. Jazzy's excited too. All right, Sweetie says hello too. So the treasure hunt was before the internet. It was for the Golden Hare was the treasure. It was found. There was some controversy behind it. Yes, it did end in controversy. But I wanted to talk about the feeling that all the Forrest Fenn community is in right now, sort of after it's been found and people are despondent. And, you know, I don't want you to feel like that all of that time, money, and effort that was spent was for nothing, because I don't think it's for nothing. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, how can I get out of that? There we go. Talk a little bit about and read from this book, which goes over the treasure hunt in Masquerade. And in the conclusion, they talk about sort of after the fact. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So we're going to have a little bit of a reading rainbow. We will do puzzles and riddles later, but we're going to start this way. So this is Quest for the Golden Hare, written by Bamber Gascioni. You know, I'm going to go ahead and read instead of the chapter yet. I'll read from the dust cover first. From September 1979 to March 1982, millions of people the world over became obsessed with a quest for buried treasure. The architect of this extraordinary cosmic charade was a painter by the name of Kit Williams, who hid the clues in a book called Masquerade By the time the Golden Hare had been unearthed, more by luck than judgment, it had led to an astonishing variety of daredevil adventurers with personal discoveries. Wild assumptions were made to fit individual predilections, and even the most erudite of treasure seekers managed to persuade themselves that 2 and 2 made 5 in the scramble for revelation. Bizarre forms of wish fulfillment were matched by a welter of quirky coincidences, which gave rise to the idea that there was a certain magic about the Golden Hare. Even today, there are those who prefer to believe the real prize still remains hidden and the search continues. Bamber Gascoigne is in a unique position to relate the story that lies behind this strange phenomenon. To begin with, his part in what he saw as a slightly dotty escapade was small. As a favor to his publisher, he had agreed to act as honest broker and witness the hare's burial at dead of night on a windswept hillside in Bedfordshire. That done, Kit explained to him how the clues in the book worked. Even then, he was skeptical that anyone would be able to unravel it all and find the hare. His irritation grew as treasure seekers began pestering him for further clues. No one else in the world knew the site or the solution. When the riddle was eventually cracked, down to the last detail, by a pair of teachers who had the treasure snatched from under their noses by someone without any real understanding of the clues, he saw that there was an elegant simplicity and more than a touch of genius to Kit's puzzle. The creation of a sparkling looking-glass world in which everything may be the other than it appears had been perfect in its planning and execution. The response from those who most believed in it was almost religious in its intensity. In Quest for the Golden Hare, Bamber Gascoigne reports at length on a score or so of the most fascinating case histories and quotes countless letters describing the preoccupations of treasure seekers. Children and adults joined forces in hazardous exploits, became expert in subjects they had never thought interesting before, and pursued the hidden truth with tenacious determination. The reader can only marvel at the ingenious, brave, funny, absurd, crafty, and sometimes sad byways into which masqueraders were drawn. Lives were literally transformed by the experience. For masqueraders themselves, the book will make compelling reading. It answers every question ever asked about their favorite pursuit and includes a step-by-step, easy-to-follow explanation of how Kit conceived the puzzle and how it was finally worked out by the 2 unlucky teachers. It also provides, as much for those who did not join the quest as for those who did, an astonishing insight into the scope and power of the human imagination. So I'm going to look at the chat for a second before I go into the chapter that I wanted to read. Moore's breakfast cereal, bro, wasn't solved. I know, Alan K. Another clue was released. I know you've been gone a little bit. Check out the Breakfast Tea and Bourbon website. They have a new clue out this month. Whole hour on this book. Nice, Sasha. I do think, and that's why I've done some of these armchair treasure hunts in the past. I think we can learn something from these past ones. I wonder how Forrest was familiar with this one. I agree. Alrighty. You want to know how it looks like? This is what it looks like right now. So you're.
Nice.
Do you want to be in the?
I'll sit down with you for a little while. It's just
okay.
I can't. The cord to the leash is this. She's like on her back, rolling around, doing silly stuff.
All right, but as of right now, the camera isn't on you. If you don't,
Okay.
if you want to sit down or anything.
Okay.
All right. Video didn't exact thing back up. All right. Sassy's late. You didn't miss anything huge, Sassy.
Oh, did you tell him about this
We're
yet?
outside. No, we're not.
No.
Not telling anybody about that. That's personal business. We don't have to do personal
Okay.
business. No, nothing. You haven't missed anything, Sassy. We're doing a reading from Quest for the Golden Hare. I'm going to talk about the conclusion where they talk about sort of after the treasure hunt was done for Masquerade. And I think it's sort of apropos for what's going on right now. I'm going to get my water. Oh, and maybe the fire needs another log. I don't know. I'm putting you in charge of the fire and the dog.
Here she comes. You might let him know it won't be around on Monday.
Let's see. Hey, here's Sass. Here's Jazzy.
Jazzy.
I almost said Sassy.
Jazzy.
So we're gonna, hopefully the sun sets behind me. I've got a fire going in the backyard here. Great green screen, says Marty Bird. What are you doing? Why are you giving?
I gotta put a log on the fire.
Oh, okay, you're gonna put a log on the fire. All right. So this is, I'm gonna do a reading from Quest for the Golden Hare by Bamber Gascoigne. And it's part of the conclusion. And I think it's sort of a interesting reading, and I recommend that if you want to buy the book, go buy the book. I know it's out of print, so it's kind of hard to find. But I think learning about treasure hunts of the past will help you with treasure hunts in the future. Among the more committed masqueraders, there was a widespread feeling of disappointment and even disgust after the discovery of the hare. This was caused very largely by Ken Thomas himself, a figure who was mysterious and by implication, therefore, suspicious. Those inclined to conspiracy theories rapidly convinced themselves that there had been underhanded work, their theme being that the master magician Kit himself was behind this final masquerade. Various motives were suggested. Somebody was getting close, so Kit, reluctant to lose his precious jewel, sent a mate along to dig it up, or Kit, fed up with the deluge of letters cascading onto his doormat, was alarmed by the growth of the monster he had created, and so decided to call a halt. It was even suggested that Kit himself was the elusive Ken Thomas. This was the familiar pattern of the angel turning overnight into the devil, Lucifer transformed to Satan, for the man whose book had inspired the seekers for 2 years was now suspected of a shabby and even criminal subterfuge. The obvious reply was that someone who had created the elegant and precise puzzle for Masquerade would surely mastermind a charade more convincing than the pseudonymous Ken Thomas and his dog. Would he not even perhaps tell his accomplice how the book worked so that he could seem to have got the hare other than by luck? But the answer to that came back quick in a flash. Kit must have laid on a suspicious muddle precisely so that he could later point out that if he had laid it on, he would have done it better. Against such arguments, there is no argument. The ability to believe in devils is a quality of mind, and conspiracy theories usually say more about the theorists than the supposed conspirators. For the less naturally suspicious, there was another and altogether better reason for disappointment. It seemed as if half the world had been hunting this elusive little hare, and everyone was expecting a glimpse of him once he was caught. To meet this expectation, the Victoria and Albert Museum was eager to exhibit the jewel, but Ken Thomas would not agree to it. No sooner had Jack Hare been rescued from the cold earth, but he was plunged into an even more inaccessible spot, the vault of a bank, where no one even had the chance of bumping into him when out strolling with a spade. Vincent Downing, writing about his fellow hare seeker, Jean Kelly, summed up the mood. I think poor Jean is one of the very disappointed ones. She would have loved to have seen it. As for me, well, I haven't seen any of the other wonders of the world, so I won't miss seeing the 8th. I'm going to pause. Is there anything I'm missing in the chat? If I need a fire in Texas, it's already hot enough, says Ryan Matthews. Those with the best cause for both disappointment and suspicion were Mike Barker and John Rousseau, and inevitably, their first reaction was that Ken Thomas and his story were equally unconvincing. Mike had dug a large hole at the correct place on Thursday, March 18th. A mere 6 days later, after the Golden Hare had remained undisturbed in the ground for more than 2 years, the strangely shy Ken Thomas finds it in that same spot. Had he seen Mike digging that night and gone back later to finish the job? Had he spent the 4 weeks before facing the television camera in a desperate attempt to discover in the book some clue, any clue, which would justify his having found the hare in the place where Mike had pointed to it? Had an extremely villainous Kit even perhaps not buried the hare, but appointed spies to watch the site, so that at the first sign of anyone getting close, he could stage manage a false discovery? Was an extremely gullible Bamber Gascoigne deceived into thinking he saw the hare being buried? In fact, the sleight of hand in the darkness would not be difficult. Or was an extremely villainous Bamber Gascoigne Gascoigne also in the act? Or, most haunting possibility of all, had Kit perhaps accidentally buried the hare a few feet away from the correct spot? Is there something I should see? Okay. This suspicion was caused by the fact that Mike's inclometer identified a place somewhat further from the cross than the measurements given by Ken Thomas, and Kit had admitted that on the equinox, when he buried his magnet, the sun had shone just before and just after noon, but not at the exact moment. In fact, he returned on a later sunny equinox to check that the spot was precisely correct. But if Kit had buried it inaccurately, did he realize this when Mike's hole appeared and so send Ken Thomas to dig it up rapidly from the incorrect place, thereby preserving Kit's reputation? In the first dark days of their disappointment, all these ideas occurred to the unfortunate quartet Mike, Celia Baker, John, and Sheila Rousseau. Even now, the story of how Ken Thomas found the hare remains unbelievable to Barker and Rousseau, though I myself believe his version of the events to be true. It is indeed an utterly astonishing coincidence that his letter to Kit was actually in the post at the same time that they were digging their hole, but it is nevertheless the fact. The letter is dated February 5th, but the envelope is franked Dunstable 17, February 1982. Ken's explanation of the delay between writing and sending is that he gave it to a friend to post. To put the various suspicions into perspective, it is worth imagining another scenario. Suppose Mike Barber had found the hare when he dug on that Thursday, February 18th. He might in fact very easily have found it, for he was digging in the correct place and must have either turned it over in the dark or stopped within a few inches of it. But this was the very day after Ken Thomas's letter had been posted to Kit. There would only be Kit's word for it that the letter arrived on the Friday morning rather than the Thursday, so from Ken Thomas's point of view, the hare would have been dug up after 2.5 years on the very evening of the day in which Kit could have received the letter, proving that Ken was the first among the many thousands of masqueraders to have worked out the whereabouts of the treasure. What argument could possibly have convinced Ken Thomas that Kit was not in collusion with Mike Barker? How could Kit and Mike Barker prove that they were not known to each other? It is impossible to prove a negative of this type. Even though Mike would have been able to stand up and explain exactly how the book worked, his digging on the night of February 18th would have looked far more fishy than anything in the Ken Thomas story. Yet now, merely because Mike failed to find the hare, common sense easily accepts his digging on that very day as no more than astonishing coincidence. Want to take a drink? So the first people to solve the riddle and the first man to track down the hare by other means had arrived at the same square yard of England during the same week. This raises the interesting question of how long it would have been before the next masquerader got there. My guess is that it might have well have been many years before anyone cracked the riddle. Mike and John were working as one team, so in effect, a single seeker had solved the problem in 2.5 years, but this is not enough to provide a pattern of frequency. Mike and John were the only people known to me who had even glimpsed the nature of Kit's puzzle, so their success might well have proved a once-in-a-lifetime event like Halley's Comet. I am certain, though, that Jack Hare would very soon have been unearthed by someone else tracking him down, as Ken Thomas did, through partial insights pieced together from Kit's confirmers. These extra clues gave a unity to the book by harping on the appropriate themes, which were Catherine of Aragon, equinox, and noon. And they added to the pleasure of the chase, but they also provided a fatal method for short-circuiting Kit's riddle. Several people mentioned in their letters the famous monkeys and their typewriters, a mathematical certainty that if enough monkeys type for long enough, they will sooner or later write a completely correct verse from the Bible. And the principle does hold in the quest for the Golden Hare. 1 of 6 to 8 was the villain of the piece, for without Henry VIII's wives, the equinox at noon was not enough to go on. Among countless masqueraders, all confronted by that phrase together with culmination and the sun man's finger pointing at March 21st, someone or other would have soon Someone or other would soon have flushed Jack Hare from his hiding place, even if Messrs. Tom, Barker, and Rousseau had not been involved. It is even possible to identify one pair of seekers who would have got there. John Soanes and Claudia Ashley Morgan had arrived at the message, "Go to Shadow Catherine of Aragon Memorial at equinox." With the thoroughness that they had already shown, their natural next step was to compile a list of all the memorials in Britain to Catherine of Aragon. I suspect that the cross at Ampthill may well be the only one capable of casting a shadow, but at the most there cannot be more than one or two others. By the spring of 1982, Jack Hare was no longer safe. I'm going to take another drink. Confirmers, says Sassy. Yes. Wish I had them from Fenn. You never know. We still don't know the answer. Other solutions sent in during that interval were even more strained and even less helpful. The most ludicrous of all was that of someone who discovered in an obscure dictionary, it does not appear in any known to me, that the word thill, Thill, can mean a fleck of paint. And he thought he saw on each of Kit's pages some otherwise inexplicable thills. He now only had to find amp in each painting. Needless to say, he succeeded in doing so. His most brilliant effort will serve as an example for them all. In the treetops picture, a girl is seen high in the air above a view of Tewkesbury. Obviously, he reasoned, she is vaulting over people's homes. And a vault over an ohm is an amp. Tens of thousands of letters from masqueraders have convinced me that the human mind has an equal capacity for pattern making and for self-deception. Why am I looking at you when I say that? While some addicts were busy cooking the riddle, others were more single-mindedly continuing their own pursuit of the hare, quite regardless of the news that it had been found. Their own theories had come to them so convincing that no exterior evidence could refute them. These most determined of masqueraders... Why does she get upset?
I don't know. She's barking at the neighbors.
These most determined of masqueraders may grudgingly have accepted that a hare of some sort had been dug up at Ampthill, but they believed there would be another hare or a better solution awaiting them at their favorite spot. Kit would expect them to continue undismayed by the much publicized diversion at Ampthill, and would be looking forward to the day when he could greet them as the real discoverers of the real puzzle of Masquerade. Optimistic expeditions were still setting out, with shovels and maps, throughout the summer of 1982. What made possible this amazing persistence? Certainly not just human obstinacy. The real explanation is the many coincidences which each masquerader had stumbled upon and which seemed to confirm each theory beyond reasonable doubt. The whole Masquerade saga raises the interesting question of what does constitute a significant coincidence. My own belief is that our daily lives bristle with coincidences of all sorts, but that we only allow them particular significance, or indeed pay them more than a passing attention, when they touch on a subject which is itself of importance to us. We are all aware of the odd sensation of meeting in quick succession and in two different places somebody that we have not otherwise seen for years, or of hearing again an unusual name or word very soon after hearing it for the first time. The phrase, "it was an incredible coincidence, but," is so familiar in our conversation that each coincidence must in fact be less incredible than we think. While working on this book, I deliberately watched out for coincidences during one specific day. Two striking examples cropped up. My wife and I were discussing a friend called Gloria who had recently died, and when the chorus on the radio suddenly burst into the phrase, "Gloria, Gloria, Gloria," from Ada. My wife, not on the lookout for events of this type, did not even notice the coincidence. Later that evening, I was glancing through a book on creation myths when my eye fell upon the phrase, St. John's Gospel. What is she barking at?
The neighbor. Quentin's wife.
Oh. It's like she doesn't like anybody outside.
She cries for cats.
Oh, that's right. She cries for cats. I was glancing through a book on creation myths when my eye fell upon the phrase St. John's Gospel at exactly the moment when someone on the radio spoke those 3 words. To someone in a religious frame of mind or attuned perhaps to receive voices from another world, these coincidences might well seem like confirmation of hidden and hoped-for truths. And so it was on a different level for masqueraders. Their minds were absorbed by Masquerade in all its variety and detail. Their senses were aquiver for any echo of its themes, whether in their daily lives or in the books they were scanning to help them in the quest. Like maternal animals whose ears pick up the faintest cry of their offspring, among other distractions, the hare seekers were attuned to the patterns of Masquerade and so built every echo into a coincidence and every coincidence into a truth. How are we doing with sunset?
Trees are blocking it.
Trees are blocking it, she says.
I would say go the other way.
The other way. Then it's more trees.
Well, it's better than a barn. I see a barn in the background.
Jazzy, stop. So you don't think it's...
Stop, Jazzy.
Jazzy, stop. Stop. Goodness. Calm her down a little bit. Arthur Koestler, in his book The Roots of Coincidence, discusses the findings of Paul Kammerer, a scientist who attempted to analyze the phenomenon of coincidence. Kammerer found so many small examples in everyday life that he was forced to reject the very idea of coincidence. We have found that the recurrence of identical or similar data in contiguous areas of space or time is a simple empirical fact which has to be accepted and which cannot be explained by coincidence, or rather, which makes coincidence rule to such an extent that the that the concept of coincidence itself is negated. Jazzy, do I need to get the little spray? Huh? Do you think that would work?
It's the other Jazzy down there barking.
You gonna want to put her inside, or is she just gonna whine by going inside? Because I think she's just gonna keep barking.
Probably. I'll do that.
All right. Kammerer's conclusion from this was a surprising one. He decided that so many coincidental factors could not be chance, but must be part of some underlying and yet unknown law or pattern in life. My own response would be the opposite, that the number of separate details impinging on our senses as we move through the world is so great that surprising pairings should not, in statistical terms, surprise us. This certainly rings true of the microcosm which is Masquerade, where the profusion of detail in Kit's paintings and text was perfectly adapted to provide hare seekers with the coincidences which they needed to confirm their hunches. Kammerer's conclusion and mine are alike in one relevant aspect. In his view, coincidences are so common that it is only in their totality that they acquire significance. In mine, they are so common as not to be significant at all. Each conclusion robs the individual coincidence of meaning. As to the theories which masqueraders believe to be confirmed by these coincidences, Koestler in the same book gives the answer to that. The history of science has shown over and over again that the fact that a theory works and produces tangible results does not prove that the underlying assumptions are correct. Most masqueraders discover their coincidences through number patterns, anagrams, and word associations. The last two are particularly treacherous territories, anagrams and word associations. Those who worked by word association like to have beside them a thesaurus, and such a book, offering supposed synonyms without reference to the context of the word, is the shortest possible route into the quicksands of unreality. Jehovah, Pickle, our diplomatic sultana, is, for example, a version of God Save Our Gracious Queen, with each word strained through a thesaurus. It is not surprising that masqueraders could arrive at any destination of their choice in such a vehicle. At first sight, number patterns appear more rigorous because of the nature of mathematics, and they have always been found a very unattractive way of interpreting the universe, with good reason, since much of physics is based on arithmetical and geometrical relationships. As early as the 6th century BC, Pythagoras and his followers were explaining the physical world in terms of numbers. Aristotle would later accuse them of subterfuge very similar to that of most masqueraders. If there was a gap anywhere, they would readily make additions so as to make their whole theory coherent. And there are still many people today who offer number patterns as a form of proof. The Pentecostal Jewish Mission distributes a pamphlet, of which I have twice received a copy in the post, attempting to prove that the Bible is the Word of God on the grounds that all its verses exhibit a numerical pattern of sevens, which can be found in no other body of literature. This pattern was apparently noticed early in our own century by Dr. Ivan Panin, a former agnostic. He and others attempted to write prose of their own with such sevenfold patterns, but it was said that they failed. To be able to write in such a way thus came to seem a talent of God alone, and so his authorship of the Bible was conveniently proved. It may be so, but one wonders how many believers in the theory have tested this numerical system for themselves throughout the Hebrew Bible, or have researched the equivalent incidence of patterns yielding 3, 5, or 11. It is a fact that an exciting theory, if passionately held and passionately expounded, will often convince people who neither understand it nor are able to check it. Many masqueraders found it easy to persuade at least some of their friends that the solutions had a good chance of being right. Jean Rachel, a keen seeker of the hare and married to a machine setter at British Leyland, wrote on this theme. It has amazed me how easy it is to close your mind onto one idea, as I did, and completely deceive yourself, and how easy it is to convince other people that you're right. For my next occupation, I might start a new religion or write chariots of the gods. I had an interesting example of this in relation to the ideas of the delightfully eccentric Ron Fletcher. While we were talking in the Bear at Rodborough, a friend of his had expressed gentle ridicule of Ron's ideas and total scorn for Masquerade as a commercial gimmick. 2 months later, this friend rang me to say that Ron had discovered an important and unacknowledged fact, proving that there was more to the Masquerade story than had yet been admitted. The discovery was that Kit had based his book on a minor French work called Masquerade by Gabriel Chevalier, better known as the author of Cauchemar. For a start, the friend assured me, the chapter headings were the same. I pointed out that there are no chapter headings in Masquerade, to which the answer was that the French chapter headings had given Kit his themes. I asked for examples. Tante Zoe, but there is no Auntie Zoe. Le Perroquet. There's not even a single parrot. I inquired whether Ron's Fred had checked for himself in Masquerade and received a brusque reply. Certainly not. The book's complete rubbish. But Ron had given me all the details. So the misguided enthusiasm of Ron, a man with something of a stature and cast of mind of a prophet, had been sufficient to persuade a normally rational adult to telephone me with a burning certainty for which he had no justification at all other than Ron's word. Such is the infectious power of conviction. About 2 years after Masquerade hit the bestseller lists, the imitations began appearing, including The Golden Key by Kit Williams. Even with this massive prize and offer, The Golden Key had to date, as of January 1983, made scarcely a ripple compared to the healthy splash of Masquerade, and the difference between the two says much of the appeal of Kit's book. The most immediately attractive thing about The Golden Key, as an object to pick up and look through, is that the pages have the flecked brown appearance and for some reason even the delightful smell of expensive cigars. I thought it'd be much further along than this. I'm going to take a drink and see if I can get to the conclusion of the conclusion. Best of all, though, for the truly obsessed masquerader is to see the discovery of the hare as a blessed release. John Webley described very well how he and his wife Angela were first tempted and then possessed by Masquerade until the news from Ampthill broke the spell. Overall, we treated the quest lightheartedly and with some trepidation as we were delving into the unknown to find the answer, the crock of gold at the end of the rainbow. A book I have just read sums up exactly the euphoria of the time, namely, you are about to embark on an adventure akin to exploration of a far planet. Don Quixote had his windmills, Masqueraders the hare. Masquerade was like a toothache, a nagging ache that would not go away. And who did you turn to for the cure? Only the people who have suffered and endured the frustration and heartaches of not solving the riddle will know of these feelings. When the hare was finally discovered, I heaved a sigh of relief to get back to normality. I suppose having the book was akin to the ancient mariner having an albatross on your back. But let us give the last word to one of the less troubled hare seekers, for the vast majority of masqueraders were those who did not take the quest too seriously. Instead, they found unexpected delight in burrowing anew in the library or striding with a purpose through an unknown stretch of countryside. As often as not, they would collapse with laughter at the strange facts and fantasies for which Jack Hare confronted them. And many of them will never again forget the joy of having, even for a while, an obsessive pursuit of one's own. From thousands of possible extracts, thanking Kit for the pleasures of the quest, I select part of a letter from Maxine Thompson. She wrote to Kit from Arizona. I probably won't have the pleasure of winning that lovely piece of jewelry, but I will have the pleasure of telling you that in all my 72 years, I can't recall having so much fun reading a book or being so delighted with such lovely nonsense as I did with your Masquerade. What a jewel and lovely nut you are. So that was a excerpt from the conclusion, the end chapter of Quest for the Golden Hare by Bamber Gascoigne, the follow-up from the treasure hunt Masquerade by Kit Williams. I thought it was very appropriate, as the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt has been found, that we go over that. And let's see, I don't have much time, but we will do some puzzles and riddles. Alan Kay says, well, if you haven't been consumed by something in your life, I think you deserve another term, and the thrill of the chase personifies that to me. That's cool. Well, whoever quoted that, Alan, that's great. I think you're talking about the Forrest Fenn poem. All right, so we are going to shrink myself. That's not the shrinking of myself. Turn that on. I didn't want to turn that off. I wanted to adjust to that. Put myself down here. So we got a little bit of a sunset going. It's kind of behind the trees, but it's back there. It's back there somewhere. So I hope everybody enjoyed the reading from Bamber Gascoigne's Quest for the Golden Hare. What is this? You should keep me as straight as we... No, we did that one already. We'll keep it big. It was down here somewhere, the one I wanted to do. All right, you know what? I'm going to move this over here for a second. Looking for our first riddle. I had it set up, but now I can't seem to find it. Come on, riddle, where are you? Sometimes red, no. All right, never mind. We're just not going to do. We're going to put that aside. And we will just bring this. We will do this little puzzle here. And we will minimize that so I don't look at it. All right, these items all have something in common. So what do all these things have in common? We have grade level, the Vicar Dibley, cuts a deal, false alarm, and hiatus hernia. What do they all have in common? I can make myself a little bit bigger. There we go. While you're working on that, I'm going to put a log on the fire. Let's see. Could you repeat the reading? Sure. All of these items have something in common. And I can make it a little bit bigger probably too. Here we go. All these items have something in common. Grade level. The Vicar Dibley. Cuts a deal, false alarm, and hiatus hernia. Grade and level can be the same thing. Oh, Sasha's getting interview requests. Nice. Grade and level can be the same thing. So there's something in common with all of these things. And I know the answer to this one, so I can't help, or I can't contribute, other than I know the answer because I looked it up. And I thought this was a pretty good one. While you're working on that, I'm going to see if they can get riddles. Oh, this is what I was looking for. All right, so we'll have that. I'll have that one ready. That one we'll get rid of. This one we'll tuck back here. Right, Matthew's letter E, A and E. Okay. I'll give you a hint. It's similar to a cryptic crossword clue. I'll give you that clue, if that helps anybody. Get my glass of water. So all of these items have something in common. We have grade level. The Vicar Dibley. Cuts a deal. False alarm. And hiatus hernia. Those who are familiar with cryptic crosswords have an advantage. All right, I'll give you more time to work on that, but I'll see if I can do a riddle at the same time. Let's see if we can do a riddle at the same time. So we got that. And a riddle. Can I do it both at the same time? Oh, I almost had it. Oh. There is a comma. I will say it doesn't matter, though, Sassy. There is a real Vicar Dibley. Okay. All right, I'll give another hint. Your hint, it's related to music. This little puzzle is related to music. Grade level. They all have something in common. It's fishhook. Raven says 10. Nope. There's your hint is it's related to music. We have grade level. The Vicar Dibley. cuts a deal, false alarm, and hiatus hernia. The riddle is fishhook. The eat you one is fishhook. Oh, is this the... If you eat me, my sender will eat you. What am I? Okay. I was trying not to show it. If you eat me, my sender will eat you. What am I? It says fishhook. I didn't know. It is a fishhook. Good job. Who would rather work on the riddle? All right. I was trying not to show it, but there you go. Sassy gets... All right. To finish off this one, we have musicians. Oh, there we go. Band names. Sasha gets it. Yes. Band names. There are musicians in each one. We have Adele hidden within the words of grade and level. We have Cardi B hidden within the Vicar Dibley. We have the singer Sade inside cuts a deal. We have the singer Seal inside false alarm. Seal. And the last one is the singer Usher. Usher. And so I will give it to Sasha. Band names. Close enough. Cookie for Sasha. All right. We will go back to riddles. Go ahead and close that. Minimize that. Bring up the riddles. All right. We've had this one before, but we can do it again. A little bit more. Nope, too much. I got to make me smaller. There we go. No great sunset today. There's no clouds in the sky. A man runs away from home. He turns left and keeps running. After some time, he returns. He keeps running. After some time, he turns left again and keeps running. He later turns left once more and runs back home. Who was the man in the mask? That is the question. Who is the man in the mask? Catcher, umpire. Who the hell is Cardi B? Cardi B is a contemporary musician. I believe she's British. Everyone's wearing a mask these days, says Anna Gray. Oh, yes. The answer is the catcher in a baseball game. Sassy had catcher first. Cookie for Sassy. Yogi Berra. Remaining anonymous to prove a point. We're not doing a long one. Goodbye, long one. Forwards, I'm heavy. Backwards, I am not. Forwards, I am heavy. Backwards, I am not. What am I? And I don't know the answer to this one. Ton. Raven gets. Oh, it's the word not and ton. Oh, that's great. That's a good riddle. Ton. Anagrams is a refrigerator. Cookie for Raven. The Raven. Not any Raven. The Raven. Forwards, I'm heavy. Backwards, I'm not. It's the word backwards. The word not backwards. Nice. Man found murdered. We're not doing that. Christmas. Oh, man, that's it? All right, well, we'll do this one. A man is found murdered in his office. The suspects are Peter, Julie, Jason, Molly, and Brian. In the office is a calendar with the numbers 6, 4, 9, 10, 11 written in blood. Who is the killer? A man is found murdered in his office. The suspects are Peter, Julie, Jason, Molly, and Brian. In the office is a calendar with the numbers 6, 4, 9, 10, 11 written in blood. Who is the killer? My first thought with the numbers were letters to the name, but we don't have any. None of them have D as the second letter. Davo Braun says Jason. Jason because he has a mask in a movie. A man is found murdered in his office. The suspects are Peter, Julie, Jason, Molly, and Brian. In the office is a calendar with the numbers 6, 4, 9, 10, 11 written in blood. Who is the killer? It's always Jason. No, they are months. Oh, July. Oh, July, April, July, August, September, October, November. Oh, okay, so it's the first letter of, I see. July, August, September, October, November. 6, 4, 9. Okay. So June is 6. Got it. Nice. The numbers indicate the months, and the first number of each month spells the name of the murderer. For example, the 6th month is June, and the first letter in June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter is so on. Excuse me. Seasonal allergies, not coronavirus. All right, Davo Braun gets a cookie. Get my cursor over there. Cookie for Davo Braun. Thank you, Raven. Okay. You know what? We will wrap it up there. Wrap it up a little early. I'm going to show off a little fire going here. I just hope everybody has a good week. Enjoy the rest of your week. As far as the Forrest Fenn stuff, don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Go to Riddle What? You have a riddle there? Oh, okay. Raven says he or she has a riddle over at Riddle What. I will go check Riddle What. Is it on the front page? Bam. Don't jump off a building. Okay. Riddle What has changed their format. New riddles categories. Preferences. Solved. Order by date. Okay, I'll see if I can find yours here. Ordered by date, it goes 4 years ago. No. The other way around. Okay, don't drop off a building. All right, I don't see it, but it might be just the fact that I can't figure out how the website works anymore. I'll put you back on the fire. Campfire. Yeah, Riddle What, I like Riddle What, but they've changed the format a little bit, so I'm just going to wait until all the little kinks get worked out. Can you search by user? Could be. I don't know. But everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. The Hint of Riches is coming up in about 5 minutes. And I will see everybody next week. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.